Welcome back to Good Day Northern Michigan. Election Day, not that far off. There's still a lot, though, you need to know before you can head out to the polls.
And thanks to expanding voter access, you may not really need to head to your voting precinct on Election Day. We're talking early voting, mail-in voting, or voting absentee. Here in Michigan, we're seeing a huge rise in early voting since the state adopted it a few years back. And joining us now to talk more about how Michigan is doing with early voting, we welcome our political reporter, Sheldon Krause. Hey, Sheldon.
Hey, good morning. Oh my gosh, sorry. Got a cat in the background knocking things over.
Cats be catting. We get it, bud. No worries. So let's start off with how has Michigan been doing as far as early voting go? Are we seeing high numbers?
Yeah, so as of this morning, the state did just roll out a new tool to see daily absentee and early vote numbers. As of this morning, there were about 1.5 million returned. And yeah, that's a pretty decent figure. That's about 15% of the total turnout in 2020. And comparing some of the absentee numbers from 2024 to 2020. 2020 was about 50% higher. Of course, we had the pandemic restrictions and, plenty of people absentee voting for the first time. So, weren't expecting to see quite that much turnout this year, but yeah, definitely a solid show for absentee voting here.
Yeah, it does seem like the pandemic really spurred a lot of people to either vote absentee for the first time, the mail-in voting, and really just kind of got people in the habit of doing that, or maybe just kind of accepting that that is now a normal way for it to be done. And we're hearing a lot, Sheldon, just about a lot of states across the country where either absentee or early voting really is spiking right now.
Yeah, of course. And in Michigan, let me see how many are on the permanent voter roll, or sorry, absentee voter roll. Yeah, I believe there's about 2.5 million people that, just request absentee ballots every election here. So yeah, definitely picking up as a, popular method of voting. And yeah, that being coupled with early voting, which we're seeing some widespread adoption of here, pretty much for the first time for most Michigan voters, will hopefully smooth things over on Election Day with the counting process and everything, and yeah, just giving people a few more options to get their vote in.
Now, speaking of the options, Sheldon, is there distinct differences between early voting, mail-in voting, and absentee voting? I mean, there's the obvious things. One, you can't make it to your location, so you mail it in. The other, you want to vote early to get it out of the way. And the other, you're not in the area. So what are the defining characteristics of each?
Yeah, so I'll start with early voting. That is pretty much just like Election Day voting, except, a few days out. All areas of Michigan are required to start hosting early voting locations on this Saturday, October 26th. And they will be hosting those pretty much every day during business hours through November 3rd, which is the Sunday before the election. There will not be early voting on Monday, November 4th. But yeah, that's just like Election Day voting. You fill out your ballot in the secrecy area, put it in the tabulator yourself. Some communities are early voting earlier. East Lansing here, I went and early voted yesterday. Got to just put put the ballot right in the tabulator there, and yeah, pretty smooth process all around. Yeah, absentee voting, obviously you receive that, election mail envelope, and yeah, you just fill that out, send that back in. One thing I'll note is that election officials are saying usually within 2 weeks of Election Day, which we are now 2 weeks away, which is crazy, but within 2 weeks, they suggest that you return absentee ballots in person rather than in the mail, just to avoid any, possible delays or anything like that. You can do that by bringing that to your local clerk's office or a local drop box, or even if you go to an early voting site, you're allowed to put the absentee ballot in the tabulator yourself, for those that would, like to see that themselves.
Sheldon, give us your take of some of those data points from the Secretary of State's website. I just took a quick glance at them this morning. But as you said, we've got, roughly 2.2 million absentee requests, and we're already at 1.1 returned. Whew. So we're already halfway there with still 2 weeks to go. I was looking, just for example, in our area, Grand Traverse County, looked like 77% of those have already been returned. I mean, there's some pretty remarkable numbers coming in, again, just for how this is changing for this election cycle, but pretty big numbers coming in pretty early on.
Yeah, of course. And the data is a little hard to parse through, but I believe the 77%, that's saying that 77% of absentee voters signed up for the permanent mail list. So basically that many voters just receive the absentee ballot by default, then they, cast that and have their vote counted. And then looks to be that the number of ballots returned is at about 15,000. So that's about half of them requested. But, still, of course, just a really solid showing for absentee voting here. And definitely people looking to exercise their voting options. And let me see. I had some figures in comparison to 2020. In total, the 2020 turnout was about 5.6 million votes cast. That was out of 8.1 million registered, about a 70% turnout overall. And even just with the amount of absentee ballots returned right now, we're at a fifth of that already. So definitely people, getting their votes in early.
Now, Sheldon, is there anything that, let's say this is someone's first election they're voting in, and with all these different options for voting, it can be a bit confusing. Is there anything that people should know, or a place that someone should go to that'll give them the information of, hey, here's a breakdown of what you need to do if you want to absentee vote, if you want to mail-in vote, if you want to early vote, if you just want a regular vote like everyone else the day of the election, here's exactly what you need to have with you and do leading up to your voting.
Yep. Pretty much the one-stop resource for that would just be the Secretary of State's website, michigan.gov/vote, and you can get there, through Google searches as well. That'll have pretty much all the information you need, just in terms of your personal voter information. You can input some of your info there securely, and it'll be able to tell you your early voting site, your election day polling sites. You can even see the sample ballot for your, exact area that you're voting from. So, always encourage voters to take a look at that, see if there are any local proposals or anything that, you'd like to give a bit more thought towards, or, put some research into. Of course, you can only vote once. We have all these different methods, but there are some pretty solid checks in place to ensure that, everyone is only casting their one vote that they're allowed. We saw earlier this month, the Attorney General did charge some voters in the August primary for having voted twice. They submitted absentee ballots and voted in person, pretty much beyond all these safeguards that are in place. And, this was kind of an example of the system working, I would say, to make sure that all these votes are, legitimately cast. Pretty much michigan.gov/vote. You'll be able to see more information on early voting, absentee, and your personal options. One other thing I will say is that those who are not registered to vote or aren't certain if they're registered to vote, you are able to check your registration online. But if you are not registered, you'd have to do that in person at this point. Although you can also do that up until polls close on Election Day. So if you're voting on Election Day, then you can plan on taking care of that as well.
Excellent. And Sheldon, I know you mentioned obviously the Secretary of State's website, but I know you and the newsroom and the web team have also put a lot of that information over on 910news.com, where people can check out the election tab as well and get all the information about your local ballot too. Sheldon Krause, political reporter, thanks so much for being with us on Good Day.
Yep. Take care. Thanks so much, guys.